Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. We have Tim Alexander with a quick update, and then major news reports from John Moore and Ann Morrison. Tim, what's the latest update in Ukraine? What's going on? And
so far it appears that the ceasefire agreement, which was agreed to earlier today, is holding. Obama says we're still going to do additional sanctions on Russia in spite of the fact there's a peace agreement. Go figure that. That's nuts. But anyway.
But the thing is, whatever we, America, and the West can do to Russia, they can trump that with 100 times more pain for us, especially Europe. So this is the ravings of a pure idiot. Maybe he's got Kuru or some kind of brain-dissolving neurodegenerative disease.
It's the kind of crap that a Chicago street organizer would do, but it's not the type of rational policy towards a nation with a couple thousand nuclear weapons aimed at you.
It's like a guy walking down that's 110 pounds, punching in the nose a 400-pound black belt karate motorcycle gang leader with 300 guys around him with shotguns, machetes, and razor-sharpened chains that think that this guy's going to get out alive. What does Obama think he's going to do?
They might find it amusing. But
I think that Obama, same with David Cameron's ravings, is like a Comedy Central. Why don't these guys just try out for late night TV for a comedy?
David Cameron has killed the United Kingdom because the Scots he showed himself to be such a dangerous fool that I think the swing vote is now going to go against staying in UK. Can I finish this real quick? Because
I want to finish it then. Please.
Time here. My analysis is that the handwriting was on the wall. The globalists and Zionist backers of the coup juntas saw the handwriting on the wall. They were literally getting their butts kicked in eastern Ukraine. And when they literally had women laying down in front of their military convoys because they have...
You're talking about in Kiev.
The Kiev junta, in terms of they've been cutting off limbs without anesthesia and everything. They are so corrupt, and they are literally in the danger of facing a counter coup or a revolt in western Ukraine. So what I think Putin wants to end this, and basically what he's offered him is you can stay in place. But here's the real game. The globalists and Zionists want to keep a sword over Putin's head by having these people stay in power so they could, restart the civil war. Because what all this has always been about is the fact that Netanyahu and his group wants a general Middle Eastern war in the Middle East. That's why they created ISIS. And Putin stopped such a war at least twice in the last 2 years. Right. Secondly, from Putin's position, I think he figures that these guys are dead. They just don't know they're dead yet. And their own people, maybe with a little subtle help from him, will see them out of power within weeks.
Right.
And so that's the game, I think.
To summarize, when the general's mama lays down in front of the tank, you can't move the tank toward the war zone.
That's right.
There you go. Okay. Thanks a lot. That's really good. Okay. Great. We'll update it. We'll update it on next Tuesday some more. If there's any breaking news, give me a shout. We'll put it up on live stream. John and then Ann. Well, John, tell us what major stories you have.
Well, a couple of updates. First of all, earlier today, the Iranian Air Force, 2 Iranian jet fighters, forced down a commercial airliner, chartered commercial airliner, coming from Afghanistan. It had on board 100 American military personnel. All we know at the moment is that it did force it down and apparently made a safe landing in Iran. The second matter has to do with right now on the afternoon of Friday, September 5th, in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, there's a number of unidentified aircraft and SUVs, white SUVs with blacked out windows, conducting some kind of what we believe to be a training operation. We're not sure exactly what it is.
Right.
We're not sure what agency it is, if it's a federal law enforcement or it would be highly unusual for this to be some kind of military operation because of the vehicles.
Any details about the kind of simulation? Like, obviously, you get air transports that have a posterior hatch, so obviously you're either bringing something in or taking it out. My guess is delivering something. It could be vehicles, it could be troops, it could be something that's more mobile, like robots, warriors, or God knows what. But what is going on? I mean,
there can be a lot of variety in a training operation of this nature. They could be planning taking over an airport, or they could be planning to take over a specific building to liberate prisoners there. There's a number of things that could take place in this kind of training operation. The fact that we can't identify the aircraft is a bit concerning. And usually there's some heads up in advance so the civilians aren't alarmed, but apparently there was no advance warning of this training operation. So the locals are paying attention, or watching it and observing it, and I may get a report in a day or two, but at the moment there's a lot of unknowns.
One of the things that we talked about in the show numerous times, John, because you're an expert on strategy, you've been in warfare in Vietnam, you're a forensic investigator, is it's very easy to have well-trained, let's say, Russian special forces, special ops. They could come in and literally turn off our power grid, turn off our internet, literally slam everything down. They could do it in place, because there's a lot of sleeper agents right across this country that are already here. Or they could do it at some distance through the cybernetic armies that can do cyber warfare against our computer systems and our power grid, which, as we add more and more grid sensitivity with smart grid and the smart meters, it's increasingly sensitive. On the other hand, to actually implement martial law, which I'm not going to mention who's mentioning it, but full martial law is impossible. Partial martial law, easy. You put some guys with black ski masks at the bank, at the freeways, you shut down some airports, easy sneezy. You start to try to implement full martial law, you're dead in the water, because you'll have all of the citizens and 26 million vets, 94 million armed Americans, as a giant civilian militia that'll crunch you. So the problem is that when you talk about the initial, what I call the made-for-TV movie version of martial law, easy sneezy, done in a few hours. You can shut down infrastructure with a bunch of real special forces people, probably just a few dozen teams, could shut the whole country down. So if we went to actually warfare with Russia, they don't need to attack or even hit us with missiles. They just need to tell their special ops to shut down the power lines. You can literally, and they had it happening here in Southern California, some idiot was going along with shotgun and shooting the power transmission step-down transformers. And they caught him, and the fact is, that's all you need. You go along your pickup truck, go over the chain link fence, go blam blam, and just move on to the next power transformer setup. It's not that difficult. Yeah,
it's not, and you don't need explosives or weapons to do that. Common hardware store items can destroy any of these very large, very expensive transformers.
Exactly, yeah. So I think what we realize is we don't want to face the music that we're far more vulnerable. They put up the space shield and nanoparticles in the upper atmosphere. They got the Theater Air Defense, THAAD it's called, far more powerful than the Patriot 2 system, which they give the Israelis, and the Green Pine radar system. These people in Israel are completely vulnerable. And the crazy statements by Netanyahu or the president putting more money into this anti-missile system, it's a waste of money. It's not going to ever work. You can always be overwhelmed. It's like... So I just don't understand it. And the fact that the Ukrainians... Putin's playing his cards close to his chest. The Middle East is going to devolve to where they eventually partition the state and start the blood sacrifice, which we know is the warning signs that tell us to watch from the tower that they're ready to actually start the New World Order. When they release all these plagues that are happening, like Ebola, which we're going to get onto with Ann Morrison next, these are signs they're getting ready for major population reduction because they're bioengineered. Yeah, and I just got a consult from a doctor this morning about a new respiratory virus spreading across the country like wildfire.
There's a lot of it in Missouri right now.
Exactly. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and we have lots of news going on in many different areas, especially Ebola, but also this near space object inside our outer geocentric satellites. Tell us what's happening with Ebola, because lots of things are going on.
Lots of things. Well, Tom Frieden, he's the head of the CDC. He went over to West Africa and spent 2 or 3 days over there touring and being given presentations. And when he came back, he gave his own presentation, and he said that it was worse than he thought. He said that there's a great need over there for all sorts of things.
Right.
And he also says that if we don't stop it in West Africa, it'll go into a spiral, a death spiral. He didn't say death spiral, but what he meant was that this thing has the capability of wiping out half of the people in the world.
Yeah, the problem is if it hits a large populations that are like Lagos, Nigeria, the fourth largest city on the planet, and it starts to kill a large segment of the population though, as they escape, whether it's by boat, plane, or whatever, the virus will be unstoppable. And it'll end up in Europe, in South Africa, in Australia, New Zealand, in America, and Canada. And it'll start killing a lot of people. And they'll think, these doctors, think they can stop it. But if they actually consult a true infectious disease expert who deals with bioterrorism, I was trained under one, and I can tell you, I worked in Operation Top Off in Dark Winter. These doctors are delusional. First off, even their so-called measures in hospitals to glove and gown and so on haven't stopped hundreds of doctors and nurses from already dying. The fact is it's an airborne virus. The fact is their measures are inadequate. And if we don't ship enough equipment to help these people in these countries, it's going to really get out of control. And a lot of their measures, including quarantine, will never work. Never. And this is the words of Dr. Henry L. Nyman as well. We're dealing with something where the African economy is another, we want to call it, fatality is the African economy is dying. And then, of course, they don't have the money to even have proper, even basic protection. They're not burying people properly, and these are very suspicious people who are literally trying to run away if they get infection, and they can't tell the difference whether they have malaria or early-stage Ebola. Ebola could be very easily treated. We have antipathogenics that will kill the virus. We have things that will stop the cytokine storm. We have technologies such as ozone therapy that could literally create ozonated rooms that would prevent it, and silver 100 ion fields, ultraviolet light, etc. Proper, what's called pressured suits that actually will not allow direct contact to air with the person, so you can't get infected. These need to be shipped en masse as much as we can ship them to these countries. We're not doing it. Our U.S. government doesn't take this seriously, just like they don't take Fukushima seriously. And as it spirals out of control, it's not just going to shut down Africa, it's going to start chomping at the whole world.
Well, I found it interesting that St. Lucia, which John tells me is a French island in the Caribbean, has instituted an EBD, an Ebola virus, at their international airport. Now, we only have 20 quarantine stations in the United States. We don't even have one for each state. Initially, when the quarantine stations were set up, we did have one for each state at an international airport.
That's because they thought it was a fantasy that would ever need them. So they kept shutting them down because they're using a sharp pencil to cut the budget.
Right, exactly. And we ended up with 7, and now they've increased it to 20. But that means that 3 or 4 states share a quarantine station. For instance, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas share a quarantine station in Dallas, Texas. And, you know...
How are they going to get them from point A to point B to get to the quarantine station, except by flight, private aircraft, or by vehicle? How are they going to get them there? And who is going to be infected? What kind of vehicles are they going to transport them? Do they have proper protection of the driver and the other so-called health professionals that are going to go with them?
Well, I wouldn't want to drive to Dallas, Texas from St. Louis. You're talking about a 12-hour drive?
About 12 hours, no.
Yeah, that's not rational. So, again, you know, what stupid is as stupid does. This is just asking for trouble. It's like dropping depleted uranium munitions and wondering why your troops are sick and they're wasting and dying. Duh. You know, come on.
And then we had this case that was we do have a case in Canada that they're looking at, and also in Austria. They don't have their own lab, so they're using a lab in Germany. And of course, you've got border restrictions going both ways, so there's going to be a delay in finding out exactly what she has.
Right.
And And the hospital there doesn't really have any isolation rooms. They're
they don't even know what isolation is, to be honest with you. If I walked into even the isolation units at major universities here in California, and I gave them a checklist of what they should have if something bad like Ebola came, they would all fail. And I'm talking about if I walked in there today in my shorts with a double-lined legal pad, and I'd say, do you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G? And they go, oh, gee, we don't have that. We were thinking about it, but we don't have it on their budget. That's what you kind of answer you get.
Everything on budget, it's immoral decision making. They have to wait until somebody dies or until it spreads before they'll do anything.
Well, or their lawyer's advice. And they're really waiting for some lawyer who also is an MD or an infectious disease expert to pop up and say, you guys are going to get screwed if you let your entire burn unit die from some pathogen, or it spreads through your hospital and 20% of your hospital staff are dead in a week. The problem is, the first flight, like it happens in these African countries, will be the health professionals, the nurses and doctors. And once you have no health system, this thing will spread like I say, is like a grass fire in the plains. And have you ever seen a grass fire in the plains when there's lots of tinder, a lot of grass there, or weed or whatever it is? It's unbelievable when you ever see a grass fire spread. There, 3,000 to 5,000 degrees temperature, spreading at 200 plus miles an hour, coming at you like an explosion. You can literally hear the wave of heat and the boom of the explosion as it heats the air in front of you. It's scary, and I think Ebola is going to be like that. It's going to shut down Africa by the fall, and it's going to start shutting down international air travel everywhere, like it's this little island in the Caribbean that's French. And, of course, they'll wait until somebody that was a little less politicking, like Canada, starts to make changes, and they'll embarrass America and say, well, if the Canadians, the Canucks are doing this, what about you guys in America? And, yeah, maybe we'll do it too. That's what I expect to happen. Too little, too late, until the thing is out of control.
Well, this is a biolab 4 virus, and we only have 4 of those labs in the United States. And
the thing is, a lab is a lab. It's not a treatment facility. The problem is you need biolab 4 type equipment in hospital units that you need to rig up separate from the air system of the general hospital. It should be in a separate building or a tent or somewhere place. It's got to be in a place where you can literally make sure the biohazard doesn't spread to the central air conditioning system. People should understand this is not a small job. They shouldn't wait till the thing is here in America in 6 months or a year when it's really killing people, or 2 years. They got to start scrambling right now. And if we don't ship as much equipment as we can to Africa, this will get so far out of control there'll be no way of extinguishing it.
Well, we're taking the third American doctor to get it into Nebraska.
Yeah, these are what are called index cases that are scary, but it's only one of many plagues that are on the way. We have this new airborne laryngotracheitis bug that's spreading across America like wildfire, and I had a doctor consult me this morning on what to do, and I gave the answer on hour 1. Back in a minute. Welcome back, and so to summarize, Ebola's out of control. We have this laryngotracheitis virus that's spreading across the Midwest and Kansas and Oklahoma and all over the Midwest now. People don't realize that what's going on is we are the front edge of a whole series of airborne plagues. We've got multi-drug resistant TB coming up from Central and South America. We've got MRSA, which has been around now for years. We have just sitting and waiting, H5N1, avian swine flu. By the way, there's a new strain of swine flu coming up from Central and South America, which, by the way, originated outside of the Baxter facility south of Mexico City at a little village, because there was a genetically engineered virus, and the top of virology at the University in Canberra, who was the head of the team that actually developed the antiviral drug that's been used, the antiviral pharmaceutical drug that's been used to block the flu. That scientist, who was head of the Australian virology group that monitors influenza, he made a clear statement, and this occurred back in 2009, he made a clear statement that the swine flu was genetically engineered. Same way as Ebola is engineered. I can tell you that with absolute certainty. And when these other bugs emerge, like H7N9, which replicates faster than any other flu virus in history, we're going to get multiple waves of different pathogens, because the only, and I'm not saying they may be the only way we're going to end up with a worldwide, global martial law, because you can't just do it in America or Canada or anywhere else, is through an airborne super plague or series of super plagues. Not just one, multiple. Ebola is not enough. It's called a test. When you get other plagues on top of that, let's say airborne H7N9, if it genetically gets upgraded or changed, once they start this whole process, everybody will be tagged and tracked. Believe it or not, that's why when you turn your cell phone off, you still can be tracked by the NSA, CIA, etc., because that's part of the technology that's in your phone. Unless you remove the SIM chip, they can track you even with the phone off for your iPad. That's all part of the whole process of a virtual world where they can keep track of you in the first and second world. So people don't realize we already have a form of martial law now, but it's not overt because it'd be big pushback. What Obama is doing with all these war game simulations that are occurring with the military and work with the United Nations and foreign countries, training them on weapons and tactics like Russians, Mongolians, etc., is saying, hey, we're going to try to cow the public or frighten them into accepting us. And, of course, the most frightening thing is an airborne plague, because if you go outside, you're an enemy combatant, so that you have to self-quarantine, or you get put in a civil detention camp, which very likely will cross-contaminate you with someone with a radiological weapon, like cobalt-60, or a biological. So, when people think this is just theoretical, they shouldn't. I've been saying this for years, that they're going to try to start worldwide martial law and worldwide government using an airborne plague. That's the only way they can do it. They can't do it with a big war. They can't do it with any other mechanism but an airborne plague of one or more plagues. That's the only way they can do it.
Well, you know how successful quarantine was when the Black Death was going through Europe. It wasn't effective at all.
It isn't. Dr. Nyman said the same statement. We know that the virus will infect one person or another. Neither has got an overt disease until all of a sudden you've already infected so many more people. It has no effect whatsoever, quarantine for 30 days. And
we only have 4 biosafety lab level 4s in the whole country. In America, was in Nebraska.
Right, well, the thing is, it's not just BSL-4. We don't have BSL-4 like level, but again, it's not the same as a lab. Facilities for treating people that come in sick, they try to rig it together, but they have to have the following things: the separate air system, hospital staff not only trained on reverse protection, but being able to wear a zero air exchange suit that's in different pressure than the surrounding air. It has to have like a Scott Air pack. You have to literally suit into this thing, and it's going to be pressurized so that you're not just putting on a gown and gloves like you're going into an operating theater. You need to be in a separate air suit so that you don't have any molecules exchanging with the patient or the nurse in the staff room or the patient treatment area. And anybody handling things like, laundry, bedding, other bodily fluids, these need to go through a sterilization process that's considerably different than going to a central laundry facility. So they're not prepared for anything. And if I made a checklist of all the things you'd have to do, I guarantee there's not a facility in America or Canada or anywhere in the West that actually would check off all the boxes. And that's why this is going to continue.
That we can protect ourselves with a very dilute solution of chlorine and water. But the guidance that they give to the people who are cleaning the hospitals is to use something like Clorox hydrogen peroxide disinfectant, something that will clean the hard surfaces, and of course stay away from the porous surfaces.
Yeah, but the surfaces are the least likely
that the healthcare workers are.
Yeah, clothing and bedding and so on that can maintain a hydrated pathogen in blood or mucus or other bodily fluids, that's far more likely. A hard surface, the virus is going to die quickly with even the simplest of cleaners. So the problem I see is that they don't test viral persistence. They don't test how long it persists in the body, even after they release people. For example, they've had people, and we talked about this on Thursday last night with Jeff, they've had a few people who've already really given ZMapp, which is this tobacco genetically engineered monoclonal antibody, and it works. But they say they're going to gear it up, and they're going to have up to 200 doses by the end of the year. It's apparently a triple regime, which means you need 3 shots in order for you to receive the whole. They can't say if the viral person who's recovering will still persist in releasing virus. They may not be dying themselves, but are they still a typhoid Mary? We don't know. And
well, they have discovered where the Ebola virus lives in the wild animals, in the bushmeat, and that is in the spleen. Now, have you ever heard of anybody looking at the spleen to see if there's the Ebola virus there?
No. I don't think anybody's going to volunteer to have a splenectomy or someone do a core sampling of their spleen. I think it's highly unlikely. It's like when I hear doctors say that person's got Alzheimer's, I said, I guarantee you that they have not done a brain biopsy.
Right. And
right. It's not likely.
They would use that for prion diseases.
Yeah, exactly. So even in the prion disease, they're not going to do a brain biopsy in the neurointensive care unit. It's not going to happen. It's a joke among doctors, and it's like, come on now, docs. You can't BS us. We're already there. So what I think is going to happen is Ebola is going to get out of control. Other plagues will happen. In the next few years, the United Nations and the World Health Organization already have the treaties in place to take over the world and set up world government. Now, it's going to be layers because they're not going to truly be able to have full martial law. But they will try to do a kill switch to the internet, which will eventually take 6 months for people to move to peer-to-peer networks and what's called communication in the cybernetic cloud communications, which I've talked to people at Lockheed Martin as long as 22 years ago about cloud communications. So I got a bunch of patriots that are inside the system, are ready to do cloud communications on the backbone of the Mark of the Beast system now. Okay? So the idea that the government somehow can control us is a delusion. They're deluded, they're satanically out of their minds, and if they try to push on people, those who are willingly ignorant will make it very obvious that they've only been ignorant to try to protect themselves, and once they actually get pushed hard enough, there's going to be major pushback. John, any comments?
Well, pushback can really be unexpected and a lot stronger than the people they're pushing back would ever expect.
Exactly.
And pushback comes when people are desperate, they're angry, and they feel they have no other choice.
Well, I'll give you an example. Let me throw out a scenario and then see, Ann or John, what you do. Let's say September 10th, we'll just throw out the scenario, and it's not real, it's just one I'm going to just dream up right now. ISIS, which we created, by the way, and are populated by Shin Bet and Mossad agents that were running the thing, trained in, by the way, in a town south of the capital of Jordan, okay, Amman, and these guys decide they are going to shut down the power grid, okay, right. And they decide they're going to actually set off a dirty bomb or a micro nuke in Chicago, really scare the hell out of people. And then they're going to start setting off biological weapons, say, in major airports, 5 or 6 airports. And people are going to get sick or die or radiated. Do you think it would not shut down society? In a heartbeat. And people are going to push back. And Obama can't do anything about it either.
That's a good one. I got a follow-up on that. It's in the...
Welcome back, and we have a caller just waiting. When we have a caller like a JG who's going to call in, he has a statement, but we want to have your question or statement given to our board op, so in clear, concise English, what are the questions, what are the statements you're going to make, and that we'll see if you're a go, because they do screen everything. So, John, I know people don't want to hear this as bad news. I think it's actually good news, because we still have the alternative media. And by the way, this is a notice for you, Obama, and your other yahoos out there. If you hit the kill switch to the internet, we will make a new peer-to-peer encrypted network within 6 months, and you will be dead in the water in terms of stopping us, whether or not it's bouncing communications with a peer-to-peer network, or we're using things like repeaters through ham radio, or signal lights, like mirrors on the top of mountains or hills. There's nothing you can do to stop us. In fact, the more you press us, the more we're going to kick back. So you just got to understand, if you start killing or jailing us, you're going to cause it to happen a lot faster. So just listen up. You can pretend and do a made-for-TV version of martial law here or around the world, but you can't do the real thing. Because you push it all away, you're going to be destroyed. The same thing is happening with the Kiev government. This will happen to you and your other yahoos that want to use medical martial law, where you don't do proper things about Ebola, Fukushima, or any real issues, or the financial disaster that's coming. You're basically welcoming disaster so that they can bring about martial law and try to see if they can crush the population and jail us or put us in civil detention camps or execute us. We have JG has a question, and he wants to say something about confirming martial law happening, etc. Go ahead, JG, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Deagle. Yeah, I just wanted to say I ordered that triple pack of Cardivite. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's really good for you.
And the comment I'm going to make, John should have some knowledge, and I know you should too, about, the chips and the veterans. And what I've been hearing you talk a lot lately about the fact that, we as the citizenry can push back so vehemently hard. But with the researchers that I know, that have been hosts on other networks, and I don't know if, I've talked to you about one of them, that with the chip that they put in veterans, much less the technology, 25 to 50 years ahead of time, that they can just turn a switch, kill the bird, kill the fish, kill the frog, kill the vets with that kind of technology, much less whatever they have. I mean,
they don't have those in vets now, but they don't have those in vets. The last vets I talked to personally, and this is in 1985, before the fall of the the Berlin Wall, they were putting in tracker chips for special ops soldiers working in East Germany, and they put one in their right shoulder and their left buttock, so they could know if they're in a lying down position or vertical, because they actually were using military-grade GPS. Mm-hmm. So they could tell if their troops are walking, moving fast, by monitoring both chips, and even if they're laying down, either in a position because they're engaging in warfare or they were dead. And they would know the GPS coordinates to where to even rescue the body. They didn't have kill chips. That's why I tell people be very wary about the idea of taking a chip or an injection from the government, because if they do put a kill chip in you, they can produce a nanoparticle release of biotoxins that can kill you. And the fact is that the government wants to do this. They want to have a tracker chip, just like they did in Haiti when they had that big Haitian earthquake that happened years ago. Yep. But they did that is they had bracelets and anklets on these people so that they could track them down to a cubic meter so they know where they were. Because there was a lot of crime, a lot of things going on, and they wanted to know where everybody was at all times. This is a laboratory. They converted a disaster into a lab. So, no, they don't have it yet. But, if they have a needle or a vaccine for me, I have one for them, but it contains lead. How's that?
Dr. Deagle, but the type of technology that they supposedly have to implement against us, where would we even have a chance to push back anything militarily when,
you don't put it, no, there's multiple ways. First off, the first thing is to have a new means of financial communication that's encrypted. The second way is to be just independent. Start getting off grid, start getting off the power line, start growing your own food, start disconnecting, and it's in steps. Disconnect from the healthcare system. For example, one of the things we talked about with Michael Connolly the other day was that the VA has now over 7,000 veterans have been disallowed from carrying weapons out of 26 million. And any member of the government can actually make a veteran no longer legally capable of buying bullets, moving guns, or having a weapon of any kind. They want to move that, and they're actually trying to there's various Democratic senators trying to move to do this before, right after the election, to generally move it to the population. And they'll use your medical records, which, by the way, copies have to go back to Health and Human Services for every person in healthcare. That means if you've been on an antidepressant, if you're anxious and seeing a counselor, maybe you're having family counseling because there's a family crisis, you will no longer be able to carry a weapon. And again, if the government can get away with it, they'll use any excuse whatsoever to take away your Second Amendment rights. So the fact is, the government's drooling to disarm us. They'll make things like we no longer will let lead smelting factories, you can't make lead bullets anymore. Or you can't buy casings because they've put some regulation on it. The government will do anything they can to block your right to carry a weapon to protect yourself, because they're terrified of the vast numbers. And I remember my little grandson Henry was visiting a couple weeks ago, and he was watching the movie about the battle between the wasps and the ants. We talked about that Disney movie. It talks about ants.
Sure.
And the fact is that finally they realized, hey, there's a lot more of us ants than those big wasps. We can destroy them. And the fact is that's what the government's terrified of. They're afraid of a waking up public that says, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to put up with your financial system, like Russia and China aren't going to put up with it anymore. We're not going to let you poison us with fluoridated water or stick vaccines in us or tracker chips. We're not going to let you, basically act like you're the parent of my child, so you're going to take over care, or literally, if they don't agree with the state takes over your child. People don't think that can happen. Well, you better think again. Step by step, there are regulations, and a lot of medical doctors trying to push to say if the parents don't agree to chemotherapy of their child, the state will basically say the parents are abusing the child and take the child over. The same way as vaccinations to go to school. Oh, well, you don't have a right parent to deny vaccines. The state has a right to enforce it. Hogwash, okay? And so people don't understand that this is no longer a theory anymore. The government is getting so bad, they don't even make their lying look good. Any comments, John or Ann?
Go ahead, Ann.
You kind of ran away from me with that, Dr. Bill. You talk so fast and you say so much. I think that
just pick a topic.
The government, I think there are some good-hearted people in the government, but I have heard recently that they're checking vaccination records for children going into kindergarten, and if they don't have the correct vaccinations, they're not getting in.
Yeah, but we have Dr. Mayer Eisenstein on. They don't legally have a right to do that. And if you just actually hit them with the proper regulations, they pull back. The fact is, they only bully people who are ignorant and remain compliant with their system. So, they can do as much as they think they can do, but when you push them back, in fact, we're going to have some experts from HSI talking about sovereignty and about getting an American, which is a state passport, that's fully legal, instead of having to use the regular passport. And we're going to talk about other issues, because what's happening is our government's literally turning the nation of America over to a globalist government, and they're doing it step by step. That's why the Senate and Congress are going to soon become vestigial. They'll no longer really have any effect to either represent us or protect us from a out-of-control executive branch, which is not our presidency, but the presidency is a proxy for world government. That's what's going on.
Well, it's been that way for a long time. Reagan had Alzheimer's disease as president. So we knew somebody else was running the government.
Well, George Bush Sr. is the CIA officer, basically, was running it. And the secret agencies are basically all amalgamated at the top. So it doesn't matter if it's the GRU or the CIA, the Russian, or the Canadian Security Intelligence or the Brazilian Security Police. They're all connected at the top, above that. There's supra agencies that were conceived by the Nazi Germans in the 1930s called the Omega, and that has been completed. So when people think there isn't a globalist government, it's in waiting. It's behind the scenes. It's behind the curtain. But it is pulling levers and pushing buttons. Well, nearby house-sized asteroid zipping by at 25,000 miles above the Earth. Not too close to give us a haircut, but maybe we'll see it if you have a good telescope. I don't know. It's moving probably pretty fast. Fukushima, we got more evidence. We had a major report I put up last night on rents. I have a PowerPoint I'll also be posting this weekend. 47 pages from Chris Harris from PG&E that actually been monitoring since March 16th, 2011. At a cost of $40,000 only. All the radiation coming from Fukushima. Major revelations there. The good news is people are waking up. The bad news is our government and our scientists are absolute leaves.